Hello everyone, welcome to Wind and Rain Aftermath. My name is LaughNgamez, aka Silas. Basically, for those of you that don't know, this is going to be the first episode of the show, and what it's basically going to be is we're going to be reviewing a professional Starcraft 2 replay with one of the players from Wind and Rain, so say hello.
Hello!
I'm here with DeMusliM, and care to say what race you play for Wind and Rain and sort of what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm a pro gamer and streamer for Team Wind and Rain, and I joined them roughly a year ago. It's been a really, really good time. Here I am in the Wind and Rain hoodie. I play Terran, and I've been playing Terran since the beginning of Starcraft.
Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go through, sort of talk about exactly what went on in the replay, sort of basically just go through the steps, sort of your thought process on the game and whatnot. Okay, so as far as the map goes, it's going to be on Serlin Fall, and since it's your teammate Sol, that means it's going to be a Terran versus Terran. In general, how do you feel about the Terran versus Terran matchup?
So TVT, for the longest time, I think has been one of the most complex and diverse matchups in StarCraft 2. The amount of unit compositions that you can go. For example, like TVP, you can't go mech. TVZ, it's like you either go mech or you go bio, or, you know, in TVT, anything goes, and there's so many openings. So playing against Sol on a map like this, that is a larger map, this usually incentivizes you to play macro-based. So you'll see very early thirds. You can see things like expansion builds. So it'd be like gas first, barracks into a CC, meaning that you're very, very open to things like proxy 2 racks in general. But just to talk about the opening, so I'm going for a very, very, very standard expansion build, which is where you get the gas and then the barracks. Sol, on the other hand, given the size of this map, has gone for barracks, then gas, which is a little more unorthodox, but it means that he's going to be getting his Reaper out as soon as possible, and he's definitely going for an expansion. So the other kinds of builds is double gas, barracks, factory, where you're very, very safe. You're a little behind economically against an expansion build, but you're very safe against the proxy 2 racks. So it's a little game of rock, paper, scissors, where you'll have like a 60% lead, depending on which opening you go for. But here we're both going for a macro build, so we can keep on resuming, keeping that in mind.
But as far as the openings go, the way that you can play to a larger map like this is that there is safer options, but you chose to go for the more sort of standard, the more normal gas first into the barracks. And is that just because that's something you're comfortable with in the matchup because it's more common on all the other maps? Or
well, given that I'm against Sol, I thought this was like a battle of honor kind of thing, like a gentleman's game.
Yeah, okay.
So here, we're both doing the exact same thing, which is blocking the opponent's command centers. I killed an SCV, but also lost an SCV.
Basically, you guys are attacking each other with your SCVs, and is that just something that happens in pretty much every TVT matchup? And
so when you play an expansion build, you have to, you kind of have to scout. If you don't scout and you play against somebody doing the proxy 2 racks that I talked about, like the proxy racks Reapers, you just instantly lose. You get to see that he's doing that before you put down your command center, meaning you put up bunkers and you'll start teching. So you get the bunkers up and you'll start making Marines after the initial Reaper. Here in this situation, he's being a little more aggressive with his Reaper. He had his SCV in my base for longer, meaning he knew that I wasn't moving out with my Reaper.
Okay, because I see that his right now is parked just right outside your base here. So what I know is that Reapers are a pretty big part of TVT. Could you maybe tell us a bit about the positioning on your Reapers and sometimes why you move out with a Reaper or why you don't?
Of course. So one of the main reasons that Reapers are used in opening in TVT is they do everything better than a Marine can. Like, they're faster, they can regenerate. Like, you can kill a Marine and then regenerate, kill another Marine, and technically do that forever, right? Like, a Reaper could technically kill as many Marines as possible. Now, A Reaper also allows you to scout really well. The grenade is very useful against things like cyclones, because a cyclone, as soon as it stops shooting, as in it's being grenaded, its DPS is 0. So Reapers, they fill a lot of the early game stuff. Like you can't run across the map and attack with 3 Marines, because say your opponent went for 2 Reapers and a Hellion, you just lose all 3 of those Marines for nothing. Let's say he sees these 3 Marines and he's like, okay, my opponent's playing really damn safe here. I'm going to take a 3rd CC way faster. And the 3 Marine guy's like, oh, I have to scan now. So that's immediately putting you behind. So the Reaper serves a really, really big purpose in the early game for a multitude of reasons. He's playing aggressive because he had his SCV alive for longer, knowing where my Reapers are, as in my base.
Now I see that you chose to make a second Reaper, and so did Soul. Is 2 Reapers something that you usually go for in TVT?
You vary it up a lot. So again, when I talked about the 3 builds that you mainly do in TVT, they then have, imagine a tree diagram where it's like, you start off the game, you have the 3 builds. Then off those 3 builds, there are 3 more builds off each of them. So It goes from 3 builds to 9 variations. So here, it was like a Reaper, Marine, Hellion into like a Starport, then a Cyclone. Whereas if you look on his side of the map, we went for very similar builds, but he's going for Reactor Cyclone by the looks of it, and a 3rd CC. So already these builds are very, very, very different and serve very different purposes. He's even gone for a Widow Mine instead of double Cyclone here, so that's a variation I haven't really often seen.
Okay, now we did see that little fight there in which your 2 Reapers managed to kill his 2 Reapers with only losing 1. Is that why your Hellion and Reaper are moving out on the map now?
Exactly. So after the first Reaper, you can do a few options. You can make Marines off the naked barracks. You can even make a reactor. So if I make the reactor, that's obviously a long time where my barracks isn't producing anything, and his 2 Reapers would beat my single Reaper in a 2v1. Right now, this is the big scouting part of what Reapers are good at. So you have the Hellion in the natural, which is dealing damage, distracting, but the Reaper, like this is the main thing. He's getting vision in the main base here. So what do we assess? He's gone for a 3rd CC way earlier than we have. I've made a bunker, which has made me incredibly safe, but I don't really need to be that safe. But that's kind of the situation that I'm in now. Like, we both made choices before we saw things, and that's often what happens in a RTS game.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is that it completely, like, you sort of go for a plan, but then it also depends on what your opponent's going for, and that's a big part of Starcraft too. But now that you've gone for your own build, but now that you've seen what Soul's going for, this 3rd command center, what do you usually do to follow that up? What was your reaction here when you saw a 3rd CC? How are you going to make any adjustments or anything that you'd make?
Absolutely. So at this point, I know I can be a lot less careful. Like, I don't necessarily need to whip out a tank or a 2nd Cyclone immediately. Okay. I know there's not going to be a Cloak Banshee attacking me. In general, the main thing that I know is I'm not going to be getting attacked. So
and that's
immediately it's like, I'm going to throw down my 3rd CC. So you might think like, oh, well, you're just behind now. Now that is kind of correct, but I choose to totally forego making many units here. So I'm making a 3rd and 4th gas. So the advantage that I want at this point in time is going to be going for upgrades a lot faster than him. So given that he's made a 3rd CC and I've scouted him and stuff, but he hasn't really scouted much of me, he's going to need to make these battle units, like tanks early on, Marines early on. He's getting a Starport now much later than me, but he needs to get out defense, whereas I don't. So with that advantage that he has, where he's going to be mining a little bit more and getting more SCVs and an extra mule, I have the advantage that I don't need to make all these tanks or use all this gas early on things that are just a premature defense or an early attack. So you see here, I'm getting double engineering bay in the production tab with stim. Okay. Now that is incredibly greedy, but in a totally different way. And given the way that this game's going, there's no way he can attack me with what he has. So this is actually a safe play and a different route that we've both gone down.
Okay, so you're definitely playing off your opponent at this point in the game. You're you're sort of saying, okay, you're doing X, I'm gonna do Y. But a big question in TVT is the choice for bio or mech. And
Yeah.
I see that you've started Stim Pack here. That's one of the main Terran upgrades, allows the units to stim. It's basically the flagship of I'm going to be playing bio. What's your choice playing bio here?
Right, so it's a very large map, which if you play mech, so let's say I see him going a really early third.
Yes.
That could have been mech. Like, his opening could have been mech, but mine couldn't have. Like, mech is normally a choice that you make before you know you have to make it.
Okay.
And it's purely down to preference as opposed to a reactionary thing.
Okay, but your plan, you're saying, is that you were planning on playing bio from the start of the game?
Exactly.
You saw the 2 extra barracks that Sol was throwing up, and that confirms that he's playing bio as well, right?
Exactly. So up until this point, with my scout, I saw the reactor, or rather the factory on the reactor, which could have been reactor cyclones, and then it could have been like a double medevac drop with 4 of them coming at my base, which is really annoying. But now I have the confirmation that, okay, he's playing bio, and I'm going to be ahead in upgrades if all things go according to plan. So if we look at like the income tab, like I've landed my third when he landed his third, so I'm not too far behind on that front. SCV count wise, he got the slightly earlier third. Now, one thing you have to remember in TVT especially, if you get an early third in any other matchup, let's say you're a Zerg and you get an earlier third than your opponent, like in ZBZ.
Okay.
The ability to drone that up and saturate it is way higher than a Terran. Like a Terran, you have to upgrade that building into an orbital command, meaning you can't make workers. Then you can only make workers one at a time.
Okay.
If we go up a level, you have Protoss that immediately, as soon as their Nexus is done, you can chrono boost out probes.
Okay.
And then you have Zerg where it's like, okay, you can lava inject and you can whip out like 10 workers at once. Like, there isn't that significant rush factor in TVT, because even though he's going to have more workers because he got an earlier third, it's only going to be by a handful realistically. Like, there's other ways to get ahead. And the defender's advantage in TVT is so much higher because tanks are one of the best defensive units in the game.
It's just a steady incline, and that's why even though he went for the faster third CC, he's only really 10 or 20 seconds ahead in worker production, which isn't that big of a deal.
No. So yeah, his third actually was like 60-70% done, I believe, when I started mine, when I scouted it. The production tab shows that my stim is way faster than my opponent's. Like, it's going to be done soon. My +1/+1 is going to be done soon. So that's the advantage I have, which is upgrades. His advantage is it's kind of diminishing at this point. Like, the worker count, it's not that far ahead. We're both almost fully saturating our thirds. Yes, he has a little supply lead here, but gas-wise, I probably mined more gas than my opponent in this game, which is, you can see that by clicking on the refineries on the natural specifically. And that's gas that's going to be used into things like tanks, into things like upgrades. I also have a Raven out on the field, which is a pretty significant unit to have.
He didn't have all the information that you did. He didn't know whether you were going to be going for any aggression or anything like that, right? And so that's why when you started mining gas sooner, that's why you have the faster upgrades now. And we're going to see how that's going to come into effect into this game, perhaps?
Actually, that's a bit of the trick of the replay, I suppose. Like, you would do if it was a normal game, but this game spirals out of control very, very quickly in a way that you don't normally see.
Okay.
So here at this point, we're both powering up. Is he on one factory here? Yeah, one factory. He's getting his armory now, but my 2-2 started. He actually went for a second tech lab on his barracks, so he could get combat shields simultaneously.
Okay.
But that also means he's producing less Marines, only by 1 per tick, or 1 per, cycle, I suppose.
Okay.
But still, it comes into effect. So I'm getting the tank upgrades as well with the armory. That's really important, by the way. Tank upgrades in TVT, if you click on a siege tank right now, they deal 40 damage and 70 versus armored. When you get an upgrade, it goes to 40 plus 4 damage, and we're specifically talking about the non-armored damage here.
Yeah.
But when you get 2 upgrades, they deal 48 damage. So when a Marine stims, it goes from 55 health to 45 health, meaning you one-shot them. So +2 on tanks is very important.
And I also want to go back a little bit to this combat shield you think, Zed. We're paused in the replay right now. While Soul invested in the double tech lab, which basically allowed him to get his stim and combat shield at the same time. Since his stim pack is later, yours is already done. But if we look at it, your combat shield is exactly the same time as Soul's right now, whereas he's got the 2 tech labs, and that's a good thing for you, right? Because you've got the extra reactor, so you have slightly better production. It's just a little thing, the way you went about getting your upgrades at a different sort of pace.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point in time, we've both got this sensor tower, which, if you look at the position, I've specifically put it behind my tank line here at my 3rd. He's put it a little bit ahead, which means it can get picked off.
Okay.
Which I think it's actually better to put it in a less vulnerable position, because a sensor tower actually costs like as much as a tank, pretty much.
They're quite expensive, yeah, and they don't have a lot of health either, do they? Only 200 hit points. So you're thinking about protecting that, because I mean they're half as strong as the supply depot. But if we look at the map right now, we see your opponent's Soul. He's doing a fair few things in this game right now. He seems to be the one who's sort of planning on what he's going to do versus you. We see he's loaded up a double medivac drop, which is moving towards the left, and then he's moving out with the rest of his army sort of down the map to the east, I suppose.
He did have the earlier 3rd, meaning his economy was better. So as far as upgrades go, if he's going to be behind in upgrades, this is the time that he isn't going to be behind, because his +1 armor is finishing.
Okay.
So this is kind of like, for him, this is his greatest opportunity to do something on equal grounds with a bigger force behind it, right? Like, this is his timing. By the way, one thing that I did do, if we pause the game again, this is really key in TVT. Although, even though it's only small, you see both of us are getting our second factory here for tank production.
Yes.
I actually lift up my 5th barracks, the one with the tech lab that gets stim and combat shields, and then I make a reactor with that. And I put the factory on the tech lab, meaning that I'm going to be producing like 10 Marines and 2 factories at a time, but also utilizing my tech lab, so it's not just wasted on the barracks the whole game. So I think that's actually...
You're playing very efficient then, is what you're doing.
Yeah, trying the best I can.
Okay.
This, by the way, this is when Soul does Soul stuff. So he's probably figured out what advantage I've been trying to go for this game, which is the upgrade advantage. And you're going to see how he tries to counter this. By the way, I had no idea before this game that he scans these turrets on the far left and boom, flies in.
Okay.
I had zero idea that these turrets, you can fly really far down the left of this map and totally bypass these turrets. So that was really annoying to find out.
So Soul has managed, looks like he is going to manage to find an angle coming in here with these medivacs, is what you're saying?
Yes. And very easily too. These medivacs get away with a lot of their health. And he's landing right on my upgrade facilities, which is one of the most annoying things possible. He's also kind of pushing at the front here a little bit, like a weird siege up position. But yeah, this is where things get very, very dicey for me. My one advantage was these upgrades, which he's now on top of.
He's pushing you at your front. However, you seem to be quite well defended at your front because, as you said earlier on, tanks are very defensive, but you also have to react to this drop in your main base here.
Here I'm trying to disable the medevacs so I can so they can't pick up. So I really want to get rid of these medevacs.
Soul managed to kill off your 2 engineering base here. And that's, you said you had your upgrades going for you, but losing the engineering base means that you are not. You're actually going to be possibly behind in upgrades later on in the game. In a situation like this in TVT, are you immediately going to sort of say, I just lost my upgrade, I just lost my upgrade advantage that was coming my way? What's your sort of plan? What do you think? What's the best move that you do?
So this is one of those situations where it's like, okay, my opponent spent quite a lot of supply doing that move. For example, 2 medevacs and 8 or 16 Marines, that's 20 supply. So in my head, I was like, okay, I have an opportunity here. I have a really big army mustered, and it's all in one spot. He's going to have units in his base that he probably hasn't brought to the front line because I picked off a few units on the front as well, defending. The resources lost tab shows that I've actually killed more than I lost, for sure. And also macro-wise, I'm pretty low on money. Like I've been producing well, I've been macroing well, I'm reproducing the engineering base. So it was just about going for it and trying to deal damage in any way, shape, or form that I can with that supply advantage.
Right in the now, you've got the bigger army on hand right now. We see your entire army is moving forward.
Yes, like this is a unusual fight. Like I'm gonna have so much in this fight. So he takes a bit of a fight there without the tanks really shooting, but now I've got this huge concave on him that even if I'm not sieged here, my army is bigger. And if I can take out those pretty vulnerable tanks now on the right side, he's going to be in trouble. Production-wise, like I can produce like these 10 Marines at a time, the 2 tanks at a time. So my production's actually a bit better than my opponent's here because of the tech labs that he made for his barracks. So that's going to come into effect as well, just with the builds. And this is just about cleanup duty in the middle, and then it's about how we fight, how we utilize like little advantages in this game. But yeah, this was a surprising win, I suppose, in the middle of the map. Like I didn't think it was going to go as well as it did, given that he was sieged up. Like he did a lot of things right. I guess he should have just, if I could critique his play, he should have been much further back and not looking to fight there. But now it's just about pouncing on our opponent and taking advantage of the time that we have, because it's not going to be long in my head before he gets like 2-2.
Going into the game, you still want to get more. You just took out his army, and now you sort of have a bit of an opportunity to maybe take it a bit further. And you're loading up into your medivacs with your tanks here, just to, I guess, move them forward faster.
Time is of the essence.
Okay, but now you actually get in a pretty good position on his third base, and that sensor tower, as you mentioned earlier, does go down. And what we're seeing right now is a pretty common thing in TVT, that tank stalemate, right? So what are you thinking right now? Are you happy with the current position, or do you maybe want to take it further? Because you are shooting away at his natural, but you're not quite able to push in here, it seems.
So there's a few things here. I took out that sensor tower, which means if you look at his vision, he can't really see much besides these siege tanks. Like he has no idea about the little blobs anymore, like where my army is. So that's one thing that I have in my head, like, okay, like he has to have an army down on the ground here. Like I see with my medevac that there's only a couple of tanks and there's probably Marines behind that, but he has to defend the low ground because losing this is a big, big blow for him. But also the main is very, very exposed here. So some of the things that I did in the game, I made turrets ready for these drops, which apparently didn't work at all.
Yeah.
But he has nothing ready. But killing that sensor tower really allowed me to think about outmaneuvering him here. So that's the next step. Getting somewhere, like right now, I'm obviously dealing damage. I want to be able to really, really critically blow him here.
Is this something common in TVT to try and cut off reinforcements or deal a counter blow? Why do you think he made the move in order to go down with 3 medivacs full of Marines here? Is this just desperation out of him at this point?
I think it's a good move from him, yeah. I think once he realizes, like, oh, the reinforcements have already gone along, then he has to do something else. But no matter how many Marines you have, you're not going to break into like 5 tanks very easily, or 6 tanks. Like on an even keel, you're going to lose everything. So I mean, this move by him to eliminate my third and hopefully attack like my natural or my main. You see, I'm actually defending my natural here. Like he can't really bust into that right now, but he took out my third. So I mean, this was a really good counterplay. Like I denied his third mining, he killed my third. So you could say that was a really good play by him. But still, the main thing that he's hoping for from me is that I overreact somehow, or I run into his siege line and take a bad trade. What he really doesn't want to happen is exactly what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, we can see all these medivacs. You're just about a stone's throw away from his main base. So if I had to guess, you're going to be going into his main base with all your medivacs. So while he's getting damage on your side of the map, it looks like you're going to be trying to get even more damage done to him. Yeah, and I mean, we saw that Sol was trying to react. He was setting up some Liberators, having a tank pop out and a few Marines, but that's not really enough at this point, is it?
No, not at all. And at this point in time, like, the tanks getting on your production, that's close to GG as it gets in TVT. So you're going to see the resources lost tab fly up in our favor. Like, my supplies not really dipped below 180 in the last few minutes, which is a really big deal, whereas his, like, look at these Marines. As soon as they get into range of these tanks, it's just ranged units clump up really, really hard, and there isn't a unit that's ranged and smaller than a Marine that clumps up better. So we just took out like 3,000 resources here for free.
In the end, it sort of came down to you checkmating your opponent there, it looks like.
Yeah, and the reason that I liked this game, A, it's against my teammate, but B, it really showcased some of the stuff in TET that it's not about like, oh, my opponent's done this, I need to catch him up now. It's about my opponent's done this, I need to get ahead. Like, we both made these moves where it was like how to get ahead, and about utilizing that in a proper fashion. And TVT is one of the best matchups that you can do that in. It's where defense means the most. It's where aggression is the most volatile. Like one of the worst races at dealing with a cloak banshee is Terran. Like if you have 5-6 unstimmed Marines to defend, and you're like, oh yeah, that's great against a banshee. Against somebody that micros a banshee, no, it's terrible. It's going to kill all your SCVs. Or Hellions in mineral line. You know, you don't have a queen to defend. You don't have like warping mechanic. It's very volatile.
So it really does come down to a lot of this just positional play, these attacks, because what I see right now is that you lost your third CC in this game, whereas Sol, he kept his third alive, and then he's also gotten up a fourth base. So you getting this drop and basically checkmating him at this point, because if you hadn't managed to get this move off, how would your position in the game have been? Because it looks like it would have been actually a little bit rough if you hadn't managed to get basically just this win right here. You made a quick decision, and then basically you just ended up taking the game very quickly, whereas Sol does actually seem to be set up a little bit better, but then I guess that comes just down to how Starcraft is, right?
Sort of, yeah. Like there's a few things that go into play there. So in my head, like just evaluating where his army is on the map, if he had, let's say, 20 supply of Marines in his main base to stop the medevacs from flying in, he also had roughly like 40 supply killing my third. So that means that's a lot of supply that isn't all grouped together. So if it's then the rest of his armies at his third, and I've got my whole army kind of, besides my defensive army, at his third, I could then pounce on him there. So it's all about evaluating like, where does he possibly have a hole? Where is he strong? Why would you attack where he's strong? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so basically you just waited till there was a good place for you to go, and then that's what you went for. And I mean, really at the end of the match, I mean, you managed to take it. You beat Sol. That's basically how it is. You managed to take down your teammate, and I mean, it was a bit of a scrappy game as you said early on. And I mean, this is sort of what people look for in a StarCraft 2 game. There's a million things going on, basically. And it all comes down to this little decision-making, which is sort of what we highlighted today a little bit. This has been the aftermath from Wind and Rain. So what we've done today is we've gone over a replay.
A super thank you to Wind and Rain for having me.